And welcome back. That's the bike. Those are the legs and arms of Levi Leipheimer as he makes his way to Macon, where we are, the finish of stage 19. Right now, Levi stands in 9th place overall, and there's a great battle going on for 4th. Take a look at the overall standings between 4th and 9th. Botero, Azevedo, Gonzalez de Galdeano, Matebo, Heras, and Leipheimer. And you can see on the right how they did in stage 9. So this could make a great deal of difference. Botero was the winner. He stands in 4th. Leipheimer 9th in stage 9. He also stands in 9th overall. So we shall see what happens as we keep track of stage 19. Ivan Basso making his way around the 50-kilometer track. Let's go to Phil and Paul.
A nice look at Ivan Basso out in the country, well in the country here. You wouldn't think so sometimes, though, because the crowd is absolutely massive today, enjoying a hot summer's day in July in France. It's got to be about 88 degrees, I would think, out here at the moment. As we switch back now to Levi Leipheimer, looking quite steady. He is approaching 10.5. I suspect he's done about 9 kilometers at the moment. We get the first time check at 10.5. And the best time set there is Honchar. Bogert has just gone through in 7th best time, but that's 36 seconds off the pace set by Sergei Honchar. Back to the start house. This is Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, who for 7 days led the Tour de France.
Starts the day 12 minutes and 12 seconds behind Lance Armstrong, and he would probably pass over his own teammate Jose Acevedo in the overall classification. But I think he's just a little bit too far behind Santiago Botero to climb up any more than that.
Well, he's underway now. Now Michael Bogart, the last time check we have at 10.5 kilometers, he's scheduled through there just on 12 minutes before Levi Leipheimer. Situation at the finish, there's no change at all. Bedrogi's still there with the best time. He's a very, very good time trialist, and of course the Hungarian time trial champion. Second is David Miller from Britain, also a good time trialist. He won a time trial stage of the Tour de France a couple of years ago. 8 seconds off the pace. Sergei Honchar is 3rd. Belo Voschiks is 4th, and Pena, teammate of Lance's, is in 5th place. But now we're seeing Rubiera coming. One of the riders that the pressure has gone off now. He's done his job out on the course. A very good rider for Lance this year.
Well, all of these riders from US Postal Service riding a very special skin suit this afternoon, and probably a very costly skin suit as well, because these skin suits apparently have been tested out in aerodynamic wind tunnels, and they can bring an advantage of around about 1 second for every kilometer. But they've traveled all the way around France right now because they were actually delivered to La Plagne after the team had left, and since then they've been trying to taxi them round, and they arrived at the team hotel last night about 9:30. So it'll be interesting to see if they've actually made a special yellow one for Lance Armstrong, because normally he must ride the skin suit provided by the organization. But if the material you use in this skin suit can bring you an extra second per kilometer, I'm sure Lance would like to wear that.
Well, we'll watch out for that, because Lance is not far away from starting now. 3, 6, 9, 12, just 15 minutes to Lance to go. This is Basso, still the top boy in the white jersey, and will be so tomorrow in Paris, but he's still looking to climb the overall classification. Basso has had a great tour and is currently 11th overall. You can see the wind there is rather sharp out in the country. Look at the flags there as they blow from the right across to the left. And they just about find half of the road on this little bank out here.
I think this man can climb into 10th place by the end of today's stage, because he started only 13 seconds behind Carlos Sastre of CSC Tiscali, teammate of Tyler Hamilton. Although Carlos Sastre rode excellently on the big mountain stages, I don't think he has the time trialing ability to hold off that 13-second gap over Basso, who is riding an excellent time trial right now.
There's still about 8 minutes before Levi Leipheimer arrives at the first check, and then we'll know if he's going to challenge again today.
Well, in about 12 minutes, Lance Armstrong goes off. The man to beat right now, Laszlo Bedrogi, went around this 50-kilometer course in 1:04.56. He's the man to beat right now. We'll be right back.
When a bike racer needs nutrition, he reaches for a feed bag on the side of the road. Feed bag doesn't sound too appetizing, does it? That's why I've created a new technique for feeding that's a little bit more civilized. Okay, it's not so quick. but it's a lot more satisfying. Can I get this to go, please?
Scared of heights? Good. Then gear up for a dizzying excursion with a couple of world-famous adventure racers on Men's Journal.
I made it.
Join Ian Adamson and Isaac Wilson for a heart-pounding bike trek across an unforgiving Utah desert. Then hang on as they scale the 400-foot sheer face of a notorious monolith, Castleton Tower. From Moab, Utah, Men's Journal, Wednesday, July 31st, 9 p.m. on OLN Adventure TV.
OLN's coverage of the 2002 Tour de France is brought to you by the Colorado Cyclist and ASOS. Buy the best quality clothing from the best source, the Colorado Cyclist. By Trek, hand-built in Waterloo, Wisconsin, ridden to victory around the world. By Power Bar, the fuel of Lance and everyone else looking to be great. And by Jordana Cycling Apparel. Jordana performance you wear. On the web at myjordana.com. And welcome back. You're looking at Santiago Botero in the gate. He stands fourth in the overall standings behind Raimondos Rumsas, Joseba Belaki, and of course Lance Armstrong. Botero was the winner of stage 15, and he also won the stage 9 time trial. Only he and Lance are multiple winners, multiple stage winners this year in the Tour de France. He beat Lance by 11 seconds back in Lorient. We shall see what happens later today as we send it back to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen.
Well, we're looking at this face now as Santiago Botero, a man that lost 15 minutes on the mountains of Ventoux, somehow bounced back and now is challenging for a podium place in Paris. That's a terrific performance so far. Now, can he make Colombia completely happy and get the time that will take him into third place? So there are 3 men left to start behind Santiago Botero. Ivan Basso has gone through the first check with the 4th best time thus far, and I would suspect that Levi Leipheimer is about 2.5 to 3 minutes from reaching that point.
Well, Botero will have to do an absolutely brilliant ride if he's going to get himself a podium position. He in fact needs to take 3 minutes and 35 seconds away from Raimondas Rumsas, and that is a tall order for anybody, because Rumsas seems to me to have been in excellent form over the last few days. It's I think the most challenge that we will get for the change in the top placings will come from Acevedo, Mancebo, Heras, because they are in fact being chased by Levi Leipheimer, and that could be the largest leap up the overall classification in this individual time trial here. It would be a major shock to me if there is a change in the top 3. But there is also the possibility that if Belocchi does not perform well, he could lose his 2nd place and drop down into 3rd.
Here's Andrei Kivilev, first time we've seen him. He finished 4th in the Tour de France last year, but he's dropped away from the leaderboard this time around. He's still riding a great Tour de France, but he set the big standard last year when he finished 4th. But he was part of that successful breakaway, which gained over 34 minutes at one stage, and he was the best survivor from it. That was last year, and here he comes right in now. David Miller is the man, still the best time at 33 kilometers. Kivilev, look at that, Paul, 73rd place. He's having a tough old time.
This is a man who finished 4th overall in the Tour de France last year, and a lot of people dubbed him as the possibility of a podium finisher this year in the Tour. But let's not forget, he got a big time advantage when he was involved in that long breakaway on the road to Pontarlier, where he gained himself around about 20 minutes in the overall classification over the rest of the main field, and after that he basically lost it slowly but surely. Well, Carlos Sastre has now just gone through the 10.5 kilometer point with the 13th fastest time, so in the next minute or so I would expect to see the time of the American Levi Leipheimer, Phil, come flashing onto the screen. Armstrong now has going through the last few minutes of preparation as the last 3 men are getting ready to start. And this man here has been a huge revelation to everybody at the Tour de France. Raimondas Rumsas the leader of the Lamprey team. A brilliant ride by him today could move him up into second place, but almost certainly he's going to finish this Tour de France in third.
Well, I don't know how many kilometres Armstrong would have ridden by the day, but he spent his whole morning riding the bike on the rollers here, making sure that body's fully warmed up, ready for the action. He is 9 minutes away from his start. Once Rumsas goes, it'll be 6, and it's not far away actually, so he's 6 minutes away from his start, and he's going to warm up until the very last minute. He wants to get onto this start house with the sweat still running off his brow. Raimundas Rumsas aiming now to become the first Lithuanian to get a place in Paris.
All right, Phil, Rumsas is away, based largely on his time trialing exploits. He is third in the overall. He was third in the prologue time trial in Luxembourg and 6th in Lorient, stage 9. Now back to Mr. Armstrong. The question, of course, is how hard will Lance go today? We all know he doesn't have to win or even come close today, and he'll still most likely win the Tour de France. But he told Paul last night that this stage really matters to him.
I don't think it's so important that the yellow jersey wins it, but I think it's important that they prove that they deserve the yellow jersey. And I don't really know what that means, but obviously if it's a climber that wins the Tour, he cannot win. He probably won't win the final time trial. But as long as he goes out and proves that he deserves the jersey and represents the jersey and what it stands for, then I think it's worthy.
We shall see. T-minus 5 minutes and counting. Lance Armstrong will be up momentarily. Stay with us. A look at Tyler Hamilton as we go to break. Welcome back. The man who trails Lance Armstrong in the overall standings, Joseba Belaki, is off. He finished 10th in Lorient at the stage 9 time trial, 10th, a minute and 38 seconds behind the winner, Santiago Botero. By the way, Levi Leipheimer has gone through the first checkpoint in 8th place, 29 seconds behind Hunchar. Let's go back to Phil and Paul.
This is Ivan Basso passing through one of the towns out on the course. I can tell you that Levi Leipheimer has gone through the first check now. We didn't see any pictures of him. We don't appear to have a camera at that checkpoint yet, and he's gone through in 8th place just now. Sastre, the rider nearest to him, went through with a time of 18 minutes 23. Leipheimer's gone through with 18 minutes and 13 seconds, and Heras has just gone through in a time of 18 minutes and 14 seconds. So he's picked up 1 second, Leipheimer, on Heras.
Well, that's not enough, because at the start of the day they were separated by 1 minute and 4 seconds, and interestingly enough he may well cause a great surprise. The man who wears the yellow tunic, the man who has dominated this race since we went into the Pyrenees and then across the Mont Ventoux and the Alps, is now in the starting gate. He's worked hard this morning to get his body ready for this 50-kilometer test, and I think the pride of the yellow jersey is on his shoulders right now, Phil. He wants to take the victory here because he believes that the yellow jersey should be dominant in the last time trial of the Tour.
That's what he said. There's the determined set jaw of Lance Armstrong, the last man to go of 153 survivors in this year's Tour de France, of the 189 who set off from Luxembourg 3 weeks ago to this very day. He does look ever so casual now as he makes ready. He's waiting for the 3-minute countdown here. 3 minutes before, since the departure of Belaki to that of Armstrong. Heras has gone through 10 kilometers ahead. The man that guided Armstrong to that great victory in La Mongie with a turn of speed which we've never seen the likes of for a long time, but he looks ever so laid back. Look at this now as he just casually awaits the call here. He's probably been given now 30 seconds. There's a cheer from the crowd there at the start line in Renier-Durette, town which has never seen the Tour de France start here before, and they've turned out in style. They've decorated their town as proud recipients at the start of the Tour de France. And this is the last man to leave. There's the crowd. Here's the count. Armstrong is underway. A very important day for Lance. Yes, he's going to win the Tour de France, but I think right now he wants to go out with an even bigger flagpole, and that's to win this as well.
Well, he was very hot there. We saw him warming up. He's been warming up for most of the morning. He will have already ridden most of this stage this morning to have a look at the course, to remind himself of the time trial route. He's ridden it several times during the course of his preparation for the Tour de France, but this morning he would want to know just exactly how the wind was, how the wind direction was. And then up until the very last moment, Phil, we saw him on his home trainer, getting his heart rate up, getting the body temperature up, ready to start as fast as possible. It's the first 10.5 kilometers which are going to be so important. He will want to see his relationship between his time and the time of Santiago Botero. Stéphane Goubert, another good French rider this year in the Tour de France. He's coming up for a top 20 position here at kilometer 33, as even Francisco Mancebo has gone through the first time check with an excellent time, 10th at 33 seconds. So a lot of riders, Phil, especially the men at the top end of the leaderboard, are going through with very good times over the first 10.5 kilometers, and that's probably because of the fact that most of those kilometers are uphill.
Well, the top riders very consistent at that first check. Leipheimer 18 minutes 13, Heras 18 minutes 40, Mancebo 18 minutes 17. That's the order through there. So at the moment they're not really gaining or losing time to each other. Next man through that first check will be Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, and Armstrong now underway. Every cyclist now heading for that first check that matter. Here we are, picking up the maillot jaune of the Tour de France. He carries number 1 as last year's winner, the year before and the year before that. And Frigo, the man who won the stage of the Tour into Cluse, he's arriving now. Day off for Dario. He's done his racing in the Alps. Comes home 66th place in 1 hour 11 minutes. No change in the finish house. Bedrogi, Miller, Honshaw, as it has been for some time now.
We just saw Dario Frigo. By the way, the bike on which he won stage 17 was stolen Thursday night. It's not funny. I just thought I'd throw that in. How about these guys? Well, what's the deal? No big deal. They didn't take a detour. They're all conserving energy for tomorrow's race for the green jersey, which should be good.
And they're all out for this finish now, Phil.
I know what you hear about Paris, but people here are really friendly. I've never had any trouble with language here.
I know what y'all are thinking, but Paris is basically just a nice small town.
Okay, so what's the big deal? Paris is cool. I like this town. Pardon. Où est les Eiffel Tower? Merci.
And welcome back. Bill Patrick here at the finish of stage 19, which we'll get back to in just a moment. But first, Sam Posey with this Camelback flashback moment and a look back 13 years at an American comeback and a time trial that meant everything to him.
The Frenchman from Paris, Laurent Fignon, became the youngest rider ever to win the Tour in the modern era when he scored back-to-back victories in 1983 and 84. Fignon always looked great on the bike, especially with that blonde ponytail streaming out behind. Plus, he was arrogant and supremely self-confident. So when it came to the final time trial of 1989, he started with a 50-second advantage over Greg LeMond. I thought, no problem. But when he lost, he just couldn't believe it. He collapsed right there on the cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées. From that split second on, he would always be known not as the stylish two-time winner, but as the man who lost the Tour by 8 seconds.
Lance Armstrong blazing a lone furrow across the vineyards here near Mâcon. The undulations, this is a tough one. It's a hard time trial. It might favor the men who are coming out strongest at this race. And certainly Armstrong is one of those. Look at this crowd here now as he changes direction. Even the police there applauding the maillot jaune of the Tour de France and holding the left of the road, taking the shortest way possible. Gonzalez de Galdeano is setting the path ahead. He's gone through with third best time at the check, but best, of course, of the top men of the tour. 17 minutes 46 as we get our first chance to look now at Raimundus Rumsas, and his time at 10.5 kilometers will be special, I'm sure.
Well, he's on the hardest part of the course right now, winding his way up through the vineyards to this mountain, which is a huge climb for these riders in an individual time trial. It peaks out at 635 meters, which is just around about 2,000 feet. And that's a tall order for anybody, Phil, after a long bike race around the country of France. And this is the final showdown for many of these men. He is hoping today that he can get one over on Yoshiba Bolocki, but he's going to have to beat the Spaniard by 2 minutes and 18 seconds if he climbs up into second place. And even if he doesn't, a top 3 finish was probably unheard of, although he himself felt that he came to this Tour de France as a possible winner.
Pacific. There is Levi Leipheimer making his way through the second checkpoint at the 33-kilometer mark, and he comes through in 8th at the moment. And let's see if that stands up. Nope, he'll drop to 9th. And 9th place overall is where he stands. He would like to pick up at least 1 minute and 4 seconds on Roberto Heras to move into 8th. But we shall see. Let's go back to Phil and Paul.
You can almost
Rumsas,
see the
his
speed
head down.
of this man.
Sorry, Paul. Rumsas with his head down here. Best time of all 153 riders, 17 seconds quicker than Armstrong. Now on his way towards the next checkpoint at 33.
You can almost see the difference in the speed of this man. He's on a mission this afternoon. He wants to get himself into second place. He tried a couple of times in the mountains to dislodge Yoshiba Bolocki, but he wasn't able to do that. But he is riding right now a very fast and inspired individual time trial. The man who is in last place on the road, Lance Armstrong, every time we've seen him, actually seems to be using a slightly bigger gear than he has done in the past. We get an idea of just exactly how Armstrong is accelerating when we get to the next time check at 33 kilometers covered. But this is a brilliant ride by a man who's almost 35 years of age, Massimiliano Lelli. He's going to get himself a top 10 place in this time trial today, and I would think this is one of his best ever performances at the Tour de France. At the start of the day he was 15th, and that ride gives him 7th.
1:06:45 for Massimiliano Lelli. Lelli just finished there, and he's currently in 7th place, and that was a very nice finish by Lelli, who's been up on the leaderboard all of the way. We've got Levi Leipheimer through now at the second check with a time of 46 minutes 54 seconds, so he's pulling away from Carlos Sastre, the rider behind him. We're waiting for the arrival, though, of Roberto Heras at that same checkpoint to see if Leipheimer is picking up any lost time.
Rejoining Lance Armstrong here. He's over the summit of that climb on a slightly clearer part of road, and he's getting down into that very famous aerodynamic position of his. And you can see by his pedaling action here right now, he's actually using a huge gear. For the aficionados, he's decided today to put a 55-tooth chainring on the front, and that will be used with an 11-tooth sprocket at certain points. Taking it carefully around these corners. He doesn't want to deck it on a descent like this because that would throw everything out of the window. He's not going to lose the Tour de France right now, but he does in fact still want to try and win this final stage. The laboured style now of Raimundus Rumsas as he comes to one of these slight undulations in the latter part of the course. Although the course started very hard, Phil, with a 10.5 kilometre climb, it is also very difficult all the way down to the run-in here in Mâcon, because with the heat and the undulations in this road, I think we'll see some riders cracking towards the end. Now Roberto Heras is coming up here with a time of 47, 48 minutes, and the important thing is what the relationship is between himself and Leipheimer. 46.54 is the time of Leipheimer, and coming up to the line right now we get an idea of just exactly what Heras is doing. They were separated by 1 minute and 4 seconds at the start of the day, and it's going to be very close.
Well, he's got himself 39 seconds advantage now, Leipheimer. And that is going to be very, very special. 39 seconds, Paul. That means Leipheimer is closing in, because Roberto had a very good first 10 kilometres, but that's a tough sector of the course. And now with the hills levelling out a little bit, it looks as though it's going advantage Leipheimer.
Well, that first part of the course will have suited Roberto Heras. He's a brilliant climber. This is the man we all expected to see as the big favourite for the time trial today, Santiago Botero. He went through the first time check with a 1 time one of the top times, but he's slowly but surely being surpassed there by men like Gonzalez de Galdiano, Sergei Honchar, Armstrong, and of course the big surprise I think to everybody is the name at the top of the board here, Raimundus Rumsas. And look at this man here, he's all over his machine. He knows he's got a great chance today of climbing up into second place in the overall standings at the Tour de France. He is hyper motivated for this time trial.
Rumsas setting the pace, and boy, has he really thrown down the gauntlet to the rest of the race today, leading at the first check for the first time in the Tour de France for him. This is his first tour as well, as we're now looking at Gonzalez de Galdiano here. They haven't confirmed the time of Heras, but we've seen it for ourselves, as Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano still to arrive at 33 kilometers. Ahead of him is Francisco Mancebo, and also trying to climb up a little bit today too. But Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano is a very good time trialist. He's the national time trial champion of Spain, as we go back once again to the flying figure of Lance Armstrong.
Superb position on the machine, that helmet becoming an integral part of his body. Cuts into the wind as fast as he can right now. He has the second fastest time at 10.5 kilometers, just 17 seconds off the lead, but this man knows how to dose his effort. This speed is absolutely phenomenal, and you look at the way he's pedaling here right now. He's actually brought down his cadence from the first time trial where we saw him lose to Santiago Botero, and he in fact is adopting a slightly larger gear than he did on that occasion. Look at the side of that big dinner plate of a chainring, 55 teeth on that, as we go back to the time check of Francisco Mancebo. And this is a fairly respectable time too, as he comes up to the 33 kilometer point at Shan.
Well, Heras came through here at 47.33, so Mancebo's going to be better than that at 41.01. So he's picked up 27 seconds, he's picked up 32 seconds there on Roberto Heras. So this is going to be a superb ride by Mancebo as well. Gonzalez de Galdiano, though, he was third best time after they'd all passed through, and he's still to arrive there. This is Botero, perhaps not going quite as well as he was up in Brittany on the west coast of France, because he was a little bit off the pace at the first check.
Well, he's had an up and down tour. He was regarded by many as a possible top 3 finisher at the Tour de France before the start, and somewhat of a surprise to most people, I think, when he beat Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France time trial around Lorient just a few weeks ago. But in fact, Armstrong himself was not surprised. He said, well, this man has beaten me in the time trial before, but we've never seen Armstrong in the month of July being put into difficulty in the discipline that we thought was becoming his own speciality. He may well, Phil, have improved his climbing ability, and that has just lost a slight edge off his time trialing ability. And we'll know that by the end of today, because at the moment, the man posting the fastest times is the man we're looking at right now, Raimundus Rumsas, third overall at the start of today's stage. He shouldn't have to worry too much about Belocchi at all, because Belocchi started 3.5 minutes behind him in the overall classification.
Well, certainly Chris Carmichael did say that about Lance Armstrong, but I was looking briefly there at Rumsas, and I'm wondering if he may have started a little bit too quickly, because it looks as though he may have slowed down. Now look at this, Veronk and Bogart here coming in together, and Bogart is the man who has caught Richard Veronk for 3 minutes, so that's a great ride by the Dutchman. And Bogart moving across to the right of the road, 8th best time at the moment as he comes over the line, so 3 minutes slower will be the time for Richard Veronk.
Well, Bogart finishing off a very good year at the Tour de France this year, and after a very good Tour of Italy earlier on. But the man we will be interested to see his time at the next time check is the man in the jersey yellow, Armstrong. He here, Phil, is down in his aerodynamic position. He will have all of the times communicated to him, and he will know that he was second at the first time check.
Lance Armstrong trying to make up 17 seconds on Raimundus Rumsas. You see Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano. Watch the time check coming in, the 33-kilometer checkpoint. Stay with us. Still to come, a commercial-free half hour later on. And welcome back, Lance Armstrong in your frame as he makes his way to the second checkpoint at the 33-kilometer mark. And we can tell you that Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, who held the yellow jersey for the better part of a week, went through the 33K checkpoint just moments ago, and we can show you that. There he was, and if he could smile at that point, he would, because he came through in second place, just 4 seconds back of the man who had set the fastest pace to that point, David Miller. But of course, 3 riders behind Igor is Raimondas Rumsas. So things could change dramatically as we send it back to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen.
And the 12th place for David Moncoutier at the moment, just passing the 13th. It's still good enough to keep him solidly in top Frenchman of this year's Tour de France. The crowd liking that as he comes in currently 13th. 1 hour 7, 46.44. The 10th's only counted in the event of a dead heat. Face of David Moncoutier, who's just come in 13th place so far. He'll slip back a little bit further on that as now Acevedo gets out to the second check at 33.5 kilometers, where the best time at the moment is still David Miller of Britain with 45.37. And that's the time he's aiming at now. Gonzalez de Galdeano didn't have such a good run on this second stretch. And let's see how his teammates go on. Acevedo, it's still not the best, as he is also beginning to slip away here. This is the hard sector of the course. Miller got better at this point, but Drogi got even better than Miller and came in with the best time and still holds it at the finish. Now the weaving, waving and bobbing figure here of a man working now in the hope he can salvage, well, salvage is the wrong word, take second place in the Tour de France. It's going to be touch and go, but he is making time gains, but he's still a little way to go to the next check.
This is unbelievable. This man is really doing something rather special this afternoon. He's ridden a brilliant Tour de France. He's been a great revelation to everybody except his team. He's based a lot of his year on being ready for the Tour de France here and is happy to come up into 3rd place. But this is the last chance he has got of moving up even higher in the classification. And if he can, he would like to step up 1 step closer to Lance Armstrong. Nobody will challenge Lance Armstrong for superiority at the end of today's stage. But if Raimondas Rumsas can pull back 2 minutes and 18 seconds on Yoshiba Belocchi, then he will be second in this year's Tour de France. And I don't think any of us would have uttered that name before the start.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Now, this will be interesting. Santiago Botero was not in the top 5 at the first check when he was the winner of the time trial in Brittany. Let's see if he can get up there now this time, knowing that behind him still to come is Rumsas, Belocchi and Armstrong. There's the time of Miller, and surviving the passage of the stars now, David Miller, the star in his own right in the time trial, but unfortunately lost a lot of time in the mountains. Botero coming up now, hanging on to a 5th place at the moment, and he should get that as he comes up towards the line. So he's getting better. 46.7 for Botero, which means Acevedo, who started 3 minutes ahead of him, has lost 43 seconds of that 3-minute advantage.
Quite amazing. The man's style looks so laboured. It's a puncher's style. He's almost as if this man is a boxer rather than an individual time trialist. He's fighting the bike all over, but he's putting in some very fast times right now, and he'll be happy with that.
Santiago Botero beginning to make an impression, but a bit of work to be done yet. Currently 5th at the second check, 30 seconds off David Miller's time, as we go down to the finish to see the arrival of Ivan Basso. Basso, who will take that white jersey to Paris tomorrow now, and he certainly earned that, having left the Tour de France last year in the ambulance as he broke his collarbone. And Ivan Basso coming in with a time which will keep him there, and time will only tell us if he's actually moved up from 11th to 10th overall. Basso in 1 hour 8 minutes and 4 seconds.
I think with that ride he will move himself up 1 place in the overall classification. He's almost certain to overtake Carlos Sastre. In a few minutes time we'll see the arrival of Levi Leipheimer here on the finish line, but this is probably more important. This is Raimondas Rumsas. He's coming to the 2nd time check out on the course after 33 kilometers. The fastest man so far at that point is still David Miller, the British rider, with a time of 45.37. But look at this, it is much closer to a half a minute in front of Miller's time. This man is burning up the road.
Even time to take a bottle en route as he comes through now with the best time so far, 44, and the clock hasn't stopped yet as he now comes up to the line in 44.54. Now there's the target for Armstrong to aim at. He is approximately 6 minutes behind at this point. So 44.54, Raimondas Rumsas surviving to the 33rd kilometre and still giving it his best effort here.
Well, this man is a completely changed bike rider to the bike rider we knew on the Moroz team, a small Polish team. He was brought across a couple of years ago to a rather larger team, Faso Bortolo, and he got them a victory when it was in the Tour of Lombardy. But I never, Phil, in my largest dreams imagined him as being a top 3 finisher in the Tour de France. He's completely changed this year at the Tour de France, and right now he's really burning up the road. He has the fastest time at 33 kilometers, 47 seconds faster than Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano, who's a superb time trialist, and 43 seconds faster than David Miller, who at one time was the fastest man at that point.
Lance Armstrong, he's about 4.5 minutes from that same checkpoint now of Raimundas Rumsas. It is going to be a very, very difficult thing for him to match the time so far of the Romanian. Rumsas the best by 17 seconds over Armstrong at the first check, and Armstrong is going to have to fight. He will probably know already the time of Rumsas at that check because it's on tour radio, and no doubt Johan Brunel will have conveyed the time check to Armstrong. Now, we heard in the riders saying that Armstrong slowed down to purposely lose the time trial at Brittany, as he didn't want the yellow jersey too soon. They say his team did the same in the time trial to keep him out of yellow, but today he wants the best time.
Well, he wants to win this. He wants to give honour to the yellow jersey. He believes that the yellow jersey, the winner of the Tour de France, should honour the yellow jersey in the final time trial and try and produce the best possible ride. But you know, there are men in this race that want to take that victory away from him as well. This is one of them, Santiago Botero. The man who's doing the best job so far is Raimundas Rumsas, but Lance will be getting all of these times communicated to him via the small radio he has tucked into his skin suit there from the man behind him, Johan Brunel. These two men have built up a very incredible relationship over the last 4 years, and it really is quite remarkable how they've managed to plan and build one of the top teams in the world, because this year Armstrong has almost been unchallenged in the mountains because he's always been surrounded by exceptionally strong teammates.
Well, that was a good line by Biloki there. He took the apex off that bend. He's claiming he hopes every second possible out of this course today because he's under pressure. Rumsas is pulling away, and when he comes into this check, which is not very far away now, I think we're going to find he's fallen even further behind. Remember, he started the day 2 minutes 18 seconds ahead of Rumsas. He's lost probably 3/4 of a minute at the first check, and it will surely be over a minute lost at this point. We're waiting now for Biloki to pass through the check at Shan after 33 kilometers.
I'll tell you what, we're also waiting for Levi Leipheimer to come up to the finish line. Carlos Sastre has just come in with the 18th best time, and he in fact lost himself for around about 3 minutes and 10 seconds on Bodrogi. We are seeing some serious time gaps in this 50-kilometer individual time trial here, the last major rendezvous of the Tour de France this year. This man right now is trying to hold on to second place in the overall classification. He's in the town where he will get the next time check, and he will then know whether or not he's really got to bury himself over the last 20 kilometers, because he will then find the time gap between himself and Raimundas Rumsas. It was 2:18 at the start of the day, and right now that 2:18 is slowly but surely being wiped away. There are some serious time places changing in the top 10 overall today, Phil.
Well, this is when time trialing, if you're not great at it, is the most painful way of pedaling a bicycle here. Biloki is now falling away from the man nearest to him in the overall, and that's what is so crucial. Look at this now as Rumsas is the best time. Biloki goes through, and this is going to take a little bit of calculation, but he is going to be desperate over the last half of this race, because Biloki's time is now in danger of causing him a descent from second to third in the Tour de France. Only seventh, 46.11, and at the same time, Levi Leipheimer, I think, has gone through, but I've missed his time. We'll get that for you right away.
Well, he still has 1:02 as we look here at Levi Leipheimer coming up to the finishing line, and this man here has done a fairly good ride out on the course, and it's going to be an exceptional ride by this man.
Well, Leipheimer's holding on. His 9th place, representing his 9th place in the race overall here. Now it depends what Heras is doing, but he's in 9th place in 1 hour and 7 minutes for Levi Leipheimer. Now if Heras has lost time, he might be up to 8th tonight. But at the moment, his finish in the time trial matching his place in the Tour de France.
Armstrong now in the streets of Shan. He's too now looking to find out whether he can rival Raimundas Rumsas at the 33-kilometer time check. The man who came through with the fastest time was Raimundus Lumsras. And look at this time right now. The man from Texas has picked up the pacemaking, Phil. He is accelerating. He's totally liberated right now. He's still got a little way to go before he gets to that time check, but it is going to be a remarkable time for Lance Armstrong. Raimundus Lumsras was the fastest man at this point, but right now the yellow jersey is beginning to dominate.
Well, he's reversed it on this sector of the course, which is harder than the opening sector, and I thought that Lumsras looked as though he was beginning to suffer. He has now reversed a 17-second deficit here, Lance Armstrong, into an advantage of, well, I don't know what the advantage was now. It's switched 44-47 anyway for Armstrong.
It's a 7-second advantage. He really has turned the books. He started off economically. He lost 17 seconds at the first time check, but he's now gone through with the fastest time, the time of 44 minutes and 47 seconds, 7 seconds faster than Raimundus Lumsras. But he is still a few kilometers to go before he gets to the finish. But that face, Phil, I think told it all. He is completely dedicated today to trying to get himself the victory on this final big rendezvous of the 2002 Tour de France.
So in 23 kilometers, Armstrong has reversed a 17-second deficit to a +7 advantage. 24 seconds taken out of this rider, Lumsras, on what is one of the difficult stretches of this course today. So Armstrong now will be happy with that, and he might well be gaining revenge over the field today as he heads for yet another time trial win. He's looking for his 8th time trial victory on the stage of the Tour de France. All of the rides are now through at 33 kilometers. They're beginning to come through at 44.5 kilometers. Gonzalez de Galliano through there now. Third best time behind again David Miller and Bedrogi, who was only a second behind Miller at this point. Bedrogi still best at the finish.
Raimundus Lumsras started this race very rapidly, posting the fastest time at 10.5 kilometers, 17 seconds faster than Lance Armstrong. It has been a violent effort for this man. He knew he had to do something very special. He maybe is not even thinking about winning the stage. What he's thinking about is trying to dethrone Yoshiba Biloki from second place. He, in fact, at that last time check at 33 kilometers, Phil, had still 1 minute and 2 seconds to pull back, and that is very doable over the last kilometers of this course. We're now looking at Roberto Heras. He's trying to hold on to his 8th place in the overall classification if he can, and that was going to be a very difficult call for him because he's got to beat Levi Leipheimer. Leipheimer is already in, Phil, and it's going to be a close call between these two men. Roberto Heras, I think, has ridden an exceptional time trial. Look at this. Just outside of an hour and 8 minutes, I should say, and this, I think, is going to conserve him his place in front of his former teammate.
Well, it might just about do it for him as Heras comes up here with a good time trial for the Spanish rider. 1:8:14 the time for Roberto Heras, which means compares with 1:7:02 for Levi Leipheimer. So Leipheimer with a time of 1:7:02, a minute and 12 seconds, and he's lost the place.
Leipheimer's moved up just by a few seconds.
By what have we got? By about 8 seconds. Leipheimer has claimed 8th place according to our calculations by 8 seconds on the finish time. So that's an incredible ride by Levi.
He still has the possibility of moving up a couple more places as well, because I feel he could overtake Francisco Mancebo. He started the day 1.5 minutes behind him and only 1 minute and 50 seconds behind Jose Acevedo. So we may well see Levi Leipheimer doing the ride of his life in his first Tour de France and climbing up possibly into 6th place by the end of today.
Well, Heras nonetheless finished 21st of the riders home. There's been 146 riders arrived at the finishing line now. We're looking here out on the course, but the next man to arrive at the check where we are will be Acevedo. Lumsras is racing the same direction to the 44.5 kilometer check, no longer as leader. That has now gone to Lance Armstrong by just 7 seconds. There's the situation in the overall as we speak now. Armstrong, Biloki, Lumsras still the same, but a 1:01, a minute and 31 seconds. Is all that we need now. No, I've got this wrong. A minute and 1 second. That's right, Paul. 1 minute and 1 second is what Lumsras is still looking for second place in the Tour.
Raimundas Rumsas now is starting to suffer. You see these small inclines. It doesn't really seem very much if you go out for a nice gentle bike ride at 18, 19 miles an hour. But when you're trying to ride at 30 miles an hour over a road like this, it really does bring an awful lot of pain into the legs. Francisco Mancebo is doing a superb ride. His time is going to rival the time of Levi Leipheimer. Now that will be enough for him to remain in front of Leipheimer in the overall classification. He's done a brilliant job today. 11th, an hour, 7 minutes and 27 seconds. So Leipheimer for the moment has only moved up ahead of Roberto Heras.
Yes, he only managed to concede or to get back 25 seconds on Mancebo there, Levi Leipheimer. So a big effort by this man from Spain has held on to his 7th place in the race. Gonzalez de Galdeano, this should be a very fast time. He's got better and better as the race has gone on. Gonzalez de Galdeano passing through just 21 seconds off the lead at 44.5 kilometers. So it looks likely that he will come in now with the 3rd best time of the day. Bedrogi is the leader still in the finishing house, the time trial champion of Hungary. Miller lies in 2nd place, and then I think we will see Gonzalez de Galdeano slot in there with a time somewhere around 1:05, a short 1:05 perhaps. It may be that he might slip away a little bit here now. He's had a tough last couple of kilometers possibly. 1:05.33 is the time of Sergei Honchar. He'll just get in there. 1:05.32 for Gonzalez de Galdeano.
Brilliant ride by him. He'll see himself moving up into 5th place overall by the end of today, because I don't think he will put very much time between himself and Santiago Botero, who doesn't seem to be riding a brilliant course out there, but he has just gone through the 44-kilometer time check with the 5th fastest time, 48 seconds behind David Miller.
Santiago Botero, 59 minutes, good enough for the 5th best time, with only 3 riders left to come through that point as we look now at this man from Colombia. So he's very consistent. He moved up into the 5th place at the previous check. All riders through there, of course. So he is improving steadily. Off the race lead, though, he's the best part of 48 seconds off the time of David Miller, who wasn't the fastest a few kilometers later. He was in 2nd place and still is 8 seconds slower than Bedrogi. But the Colombian boy not quite firing as he was in the early weeks of the Tour de France. He had his bad dip in the middle in the Grand Provence, on the Giant of Provence as well, but he certainly came back strong in the Alps.
Well, he's a courageous bike rider. We've seen him defeat Lance Armstrong in the individual time trial at this year's Tour de France. He's got himself 2 stage victories, one of the big mountain stages of the Tour and a flat time trial stage as well. The moment, the top 5 at the finish line, Phil, looks a little bit like this. Bedrogi is still the fastest in ahead of Miller, but at the 44-kilometer point, Rumsas is the fastest man, 37 seconds faster than David Miller.
It's very, very tight right now at the finish. It's going to be pretty good to see exactly what Lance Armstrong can do at the 3rd and final check before the finish, which is where Rumsas is heading to at the moment. And nobody getting up to the times. Rumsas is through there with 57.35 now as we speak, so his best time at 44.5 kilometers.
Armstrong doesn't look rattled at all by all of this. He will be continually kept up to date by his team manager, Johan Brunel, in the car behind him. This perfect pedaling machine called Lance Armstrong at the moment has got that high cadence. It's up to around about 95 revolutions for every minute now. He's still using a much bigger gear than he used in the first time trial, where he was defeated by Santiago Botero. He has the fastest time at the 2nd time check at 33 kilometers covered, and I would say in around about 4.5 minutes time we'll see just what kind of ride he's doing at Mâcon as we come into the outskirts of the city, and that will leave him 6 kilometers to ride to the finish line.
Well, Bolocki must be hanging on there, and that's all the way it is now. 61 seconds was the last difference between the two for a place on 2nd overall in the Tour de France, and we know that Rumsas is still gaining time. It's just as well Bolocki rode a little bit better in the mountains, because he might, and only might, hold 2nd place by the seat of his racing shorts when it comes down to the final calculations. Still waiting for Bolocki at 44.5 kilometers. Armstrong, remember, 3 minutes behind. Here's the head-to-head battle now between the 2 riders looking for 2nd place in the Tour de France. the picture on the right there, and there's a little bit of interference over there. Look at the face now, because this Lithuanian said, it may not mean a lot to the public in France whether I finish second or third, but it means a lot to me.
And it means a lot to his country as well. If he could get up to second place, it would be absolutely magical for him. No Lithuania has ever got onto the podium at the Tour de France before, and right now he's looking at a second place finish. He's separated on the road in the overall classification right now by a mere minute from Yoshiba Bolocki, who we're looking at the moment. They started the day separated by 2 minutes and 18 seconds, but it looks right now as if it's a slightly more laboured pedaling style coming from Raimundus Rumsas. He started very fast. He has the fastest time at 44 kilometres, but in the next few minutes we should see the time of Yoshiba Bolocki come through there, and that will give us an indication as to whether or not he is still holding on to the fastest time of the race so far.
Well, a nice new style of handlebar here for Rumsas as he continues to move towards the finish now. He's in the streets of Mâcon as he races towards the finishing line. When he gets there, he's going to have the best time with only 2 men to come. We still have got no news on Bolocki at the 44.5 kilometre check, where Rumsas' best time, 37 seconds ahead of David Miller, 38 seconds ahead of Bedrogi, but at the finish, Bedrogi is the new leader and has been for most of the day. This is the arrival now of Jose Acevedo, a man who was starting a high flyer in today's stage of the Tour de France in 5th place, and this ride might just about keep him there. He might go to 6th. 1:7:26.
Well, I don't think Levi Leipheimer will have moved over that man in the overall classification either, because that was an excellent ride by Acevedo. He really recovered after a fairly slow start. He rode persistently over the next few time checks and has managed to come in with a good performance there, and he should keep himself in 6th place at the end of today after 1 or 2 changes in the top 10 overall. The next man to come to the line will be this man, the huge success in Colombia, Santiago Botero. He's won 3 stages at the Tour de France over his lifetime. He's won the King of the Mountains. He's one of the rare men to beat Lance Armstrong in an individual time trial at the Tour de France. And right now what he's looking at is trying to make sure that he keeps himself up in 4th place, because he's not going to win the time trial today as he did between Lanester and Lorient.
No, the same style is there as we saw in Luxembourg in the prologue and as we saw in Lorient in Brittany. But the reward will not be there today, but it'll keep him in a fine finish when he dropped away from the leaderboard on Mont Ventoux, fought his way back in the Alps after Mont Ventoux, and now confirms his high finish with this ride today. He should nicely finish in 4th place and continue his progress as a newcomer, comparative newcomer, into the Tour de France. Former King of the Mountains in the Tour de France, Santiago Botero. Bolocki has gone through in 6th place, a minute 22 off at 44.5 kilometres covered. As we watch Botero finish, another man who's coming in here with a time very close to represent his overall position. 6th place at the moment, can't be worse than 8th now, 9th, 1:6:01 for Botero.
Well, that's a good ride by him. Not as good as it was between Lanester and Lorient, but he will be satisfied with that. He'll come out of the Tour de France, Phil, with a 4th place finish overall and 2 stage wins to boot. Yoshiba Bolocki conceding 1 minute and 22 seconds to Raimundus Rumsas means that for the moment he is still in 2nd place overall, and I think he will keep that because he's only 6 kilometres to go to the finishing line right now. So at the moment, the overall classification is still Armstrong ahead of Bolocki, ahead of Raimundus Rumsas, but it is going to be very close, and there's no problem at all for Santiago Botero because he will run out 4th place overall.
It is amazing, but with 56 seconds to his favour, Bolocki will not lose that surely as they approach the line. But now Armstrong is through, new best time, 57 minutes 01, 34 seconds quicker than Rumsas. Armstrong will win the time trial.
He's turning on the gas right now. He's opening up all the throttles and the afterburners over the last few kilometres. 57 minutes and 1 second is 34 seconds faster than Raimundus Rumsas. But Rumsas now is in the finishing straight. He's digging very deep. He's done an absolutely superb time trial. What will be important for him, though, Phil, is not his time on the line right now, because he's not going to win the time trial. The time between himself and Yoshiba Bolocki is what is important.
And Raimundus Rumsas will rue the day he allowed Bolocki to spring clear of him on those hilltop finishes and gain a handful of seconds, because he's cost him 2nd place in the Tour de France. He comes home currently to a cheer and he gets the best time. But wait for the arrival of Armstrong. 1:4:43 for Rumsas, and that when all the calculations are complete, I think he'll have lost second place in the Tour de France by about 45 seconds.
It won't be very much at all, but what a brilliant performance by this man. He went through the first time check with the fastest time, and that would have been somewhat of a shock to Lance Armstrong because he was 17 seconds faster than the man in the yellow jersey then. But Armstrong now, Phil, is getting into his rhythm. He is accelerating as he gets closer towards the finishing line. He went through the second time check after 33 kilometers, 19 miles, the fastest man, and he confirmed that again as they came into the outskirts of Macon at 44 kilometers by a 34-second beating of Raimundus Rumsas at that point. Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano was a lot further back in 1:32, and Yoshiba Bolocki at that point was in 7th place.
4 kilometers to go for Lance Armstrong while we switch back to Yoshiba Bolocki here now. The finish result is beginning to take shape. The only man who will break in there will be Lance Armstrong. He must do a time of 1 hour, 7 minutes and 1 second, Bolocki, to hold on to second place. I think he'll do that. Armstrong currently 7 minutes, 2 seconds behind officially now, taking into account the time losses and gains today. There he is now in this beautiful wooded boulevard of Macon, as Lance Armstrong is going out of this year's Tour de France on the high note he wanted by winning the final time trial, and tomorrow he rides to Paris as a triple, well, I've lost count,
Quadruple.
4 wins now.
Quadruple.
4 wins in the time in the stages of the Tour de France, and again that will match the number of victories overall in the Tour de France for him. This is Bolocki now heading down towards the finishing line. Every second will count. He should be okay, but he's aiming for a time not worse than 1 hour, 7 minutes and 1 second. If it is, then he'll stand in his familiar 3rd place on the podium in Paris.
I think he's done enough. He's riding very well right now. He had a tough moment in the middle of the course, but he's picking up his pace, making quite dramatically. Armstrong right now is also riding a superb time trial. He's posted the fastest time check at the last 2 time checks out on the course, and there's no sign at all of weakness in this man. Totally liberated. He's got no more responsibilities. He doesn't have to hold anything back at all today, and tomorrow he will ride onto the Champs-Élysées behind the blue train of US Postal Service, the train that has guided him around the hexagon of France over the last 3 weeks of bike racing to absolute perfection, being dubbed right now one of the best teams in the world for the last 30 or 40 years.
Armstrong has been the leader at the 2nd and 3rd check. He had to reverse a 17-second deficit on Rumsas. Rumsas has finished with the best time of 1:4:43. And Bolocki, now racing into the last kilometre, cannot do worse than 1:7:01. I think he'll be okay, but you never know till the clock confirms it, as he now has 900 metres to go. Tomorrow they can sup the champagne on the road to Paris, but today this is deciding the final finishing position. The David Miller of Britain too is looking set now to finish 4th in this time trial today, which proves that he too is coming strongly out of this Tour de France.
Well, he's had a hard day through the mountains. He has recovered and he has lost an awful lot of his time trialing ability, because to finish well inside the top 5 on a day like this, when men are doing battle for the overall placings at the end of 3 weeks of racing, Miller has come up with a fine performance. 500 metres to go for Bolocki right now. The time on the clock on the finish line is just 1 hour, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, so there will be no problem at all for this man. He started the day 2 minutes 18 seconds ahead of Raimundus Rumsas. He's conserved enough of that, Phil, to finish 2nd overall.
You're right, he is safe now. It'll be a 1:06 something, so that'll give him the victory of 2nd place by about that 45 seconds I mentioned, because as he comes up to the line, there's the time of Rumsas. Bolocki, not the best time trialist in the world, but boy did he suffer today to conserve his 2nd place in the Tour de France. Hits the line in 1:06:01. He saved it by a minute.
Well, that was a brilliant ride by him. He really must have dug deep to stay there and keep himself in 2nd position. It was a position he wanted to keep, but right now we're waiting for just one man out on the road. The time to beat is 1:04:43 of Raimundus Rumsas. Armstrong is not far away right now, and I tell you one thing, this crowd is going to give him a huge ovation. He's in the corner now, Phil. This is an unbelievable ride. The clock says 1:03:31, and listen to the crowd bring the American champion home.
Well, I'll tell you, this man another 2 kilometres would have caught Bolocki for 3 minutes, as Armstrong now comes in. Bolocki's 1:06.01 and Armstrong just over 2 minutes quicker than him as he races to the line to the victory. 1:03.50. There's no argument who the champion is of the Tour de France for the 4th year in succession.
Well, Phil, look at that average speed as well. 47 kilometers an hour over a very difficult terrain. Armstrong really dug deep for that when he wanted to do that for the pride of the yellow jersey. Unbelievable over the last few kilometers. What a magnificent sight. The man in the yellow jersey, resplendent on the last day, totally liberated to ride this final time trial as hard as he wanted to. And he got what he wanted, the final win in the final time trial of the Tour de France today.
So Lance Armstrong, with a time of 1 hour, 3 minutes and 50 seconds, has won his 8th time trial in a Tour de France, and this has confirmed him once again as the man who is the champion of the Tour.
Well, he continues to amaze. I don't think anybody's surprised by this, but Lance Armstrong picks up his 4th stage win of the 2002 Tour de France, coming from way behind after the first checkpoint to win stage 19, the 2nd individual time trial. We're coming right back. And welcome back to our post-race show. Bill Patrick with you in Macon, where Lance Armstrong has won stage 19 by 53 seconds over Raimundas Rumsas, a minute 6 over Bodrogi, 1:14 clear of David Miller. Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano comes in 5th, and you see the rest. And overall, Lance has now stretched his lead over Joseba Balaki to 7 minutes and 17 seconds. Rumsas, with a great ride today, closed the gap on Balaki, but he still trails the Spaniard by 1 full minute. And you see Levi Leipheimer jumping into 8th place, leapfrogging over Roberto Harris of U.S. Postal. Once again, Lance Armstrong, his 4th stage win of this 2002 Tour de France. He, of course, won the prologue time trial. He won stages 11 and 12. He wins today. His average speed, 47 kilometers per hour today, and he said he wanted to win it so badly to show the world that he really deserves the yellow jersey, as if we didn't know that. But it was a matter of pride. Now let's go back to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen for their comments.
As we look down now on the red roofs of Macon here, this beautiful town has welcomed the sensational finish of the Tour de France, confirming Lance Armstrong as the man who is the Tour de France these past 4 years. And indeed, Paul, he'll be delighted now. He's a winner again of the time trial, winning in the grand style of the greats of this race through the decades, because he has now won 4 stages. And Bolocki will take 2nd place overall, but he must have been frightened out of his pants at half distance.
Well, at half distance, he'd lost himself well over a minute of his advantage, but he conserved it over the last 20 kilometers or so and managed to hold off the attack by Raimundas Rumsas. And as you said earlier, I think Raimundas Rumsas now will rue the climbs when he lost those few seconds every time it went uphill to Joseba Bolocki. But it has been a magnificent battle today, and that's rather a dramatic time trial victory for Armstrong, who went through the first time check in 2nd place, but after that I think he just gave it everything that he had. He wanted to prove that he was the dominator, and certainly probably going to try and earn himself the fact that he is nowadays the cannibal of the Tour de France, with 4 stage wins and a magnificent victory, making it win number 4, and who knows how many he could go on to win.
Well, he won at Luxembourg, but he decided not to try and lead this tour all the way to Paris. He let the jersey go next day, and although we haven't had it confirmed, I have a feeling that the time today set by Armstrong will have eliminated from the Tour the man in the yellow jersey soon after Lance, and that is Rubens Battagliati, because his time was very, very slow, and there was a real risk that a time of 1 hour 3 minutes could have eliminated him from the Tour. Obviously, we'll find that out when the full results are printed, but that's really tough luck if he's gone out of the Tour just 1 day from the end. He's conceded 13 minutes and 39 seconds today, Battagliati on Armstrong. I think that'll put him out of the Tour.
All right, fellas, thank you very much. It should be something tomorrow with Lance Armstrong and U.S. Postal leading the parade into Paris, and something like a coronation if you will. All right, it is time for our Lincoln Ride of the Day. And, well, as you can well imagine, this was a slam dunk. Lance Armstrong. He trailed Raimundos Rumsas by 17 seconds after the first checkpoint. But 23 kilometers later, Armstrong had made up 24 seconds, and we knew that something special was up. He was just warming up. He wound up winning by 53 seconds, his 8th career time trial win in the Tour de France. Well, it was a matter of yellow jersey pride, and he came through for our Lincoln Ride of the Day. And here he is on the climb, Lance Armstrong. Maybe the greatest of all time as he runs the gauntlet of fans here in Macon. We'll be back with more from our post-race show in a moment.
Sunday, August 4th, live from the streets of New York, Lance Armstrong and the U.S. Postal Team, along with some of the world's greatest cyclists, race like screaming banshees through the brick and glass canyons of Lower Manhattan in the New York City Championships. Sunday, August 4th at 1 p.m. Eastern, only on OLN, Adventure TV.
The 2002 Tour de France is brought to you by Circuit City. We know the excitement you feel about the latest digital toys. That's why we're here. Circuit City, we're with you. By the United States Postal Service. By the Colorado Cyclist and Accelerate, the first sports drink engineered to meet the hydration, energy, and nutrition needs of working muscles. And by AIG, Insurance Financial Services, and the freedom to dare. And welcome back. The familiar form of Lance Armstrong. Up the hill, another victory. Stage 19 is his 4th stage win of this 2002 Tour de France, winning it in grand style. There's Lance on the podium. And Phil and Paul, I got to bring this subject up. I had a sneaky feeling that we were hoodwinked by Mr. Armstrong, who would have us believe that he was not the favorite coming in today.
Well, I don't know. I think today he really did want it, Bill, because he lost. Well, Frankie Andreu said to us he thought he'd lost the race on purpose. He didn't want to wear the leader's yellow jersey, but there's no doubt now he wants to prove he's the best. And there's Bernard Hinault congratulating Lance, and there was a little shake of the head there from Lance saying, well, that was tough, but I did it.
Well, you know, he had to do that today. The difference between the first time trial as well and this one was because he doesn't have to hold anything back at all. He's just got to ride up and down the Champs-Élysées tomorrow. Riding between Lanester and Lorient in the back of his mind was still the fact that he had a lot of big mountain stages to go over. So, yes, he might have held back a little bit, but I'm sure he still wanted to win that time trial, the first one in Lanester-Lorient.
Well, there's no question he's going to win the Tour de France by the second biggest margin of the 4. And he always said this would be the one that might be his hardest. I think he changed his mind halfway through because, as we saw, there wasn't a man in the race could challenge him at any stage of this race. He was never under pressure. Lance Armstrong collects the next little line there from the Credit Lyonnais. Another one safely in the bank. And he's now won 8 time trial stages, and he's won in all 15 stages of the Tour de France. He really is the champion, whichever angle you look at him from.
Well, he's happy, Phil, with that one. He certainly went out to try and get that win today. He might have thought that Santiago Botero could take the victory again. I'm not sure that he was trying to hoodwink us at all. I think he was just trying to take a bit of worry off his shoulders and go into this final time trial in a relaxed manner.
Yep, I quite agree. And tomorrow it'll be all smiles on the Champs-Élysées. But it won't be all smiles for Robin McEwen and Eric Zabel. They will have to grit their teeth and fight to the line, because the one that beats the other will take home the green jersey, which is indeed the second most important competition in the Tour de France, introduced in 1953, and we're getting the best battle since then. McEwen, advantage him. He won't talk about this time tomorrow night. He said so. He'll wait and see. but he's got to be confident. His legs are fast.
Well, he's very fast, and he's only really got one man to keep an eye on. That's Eric Zabel, the man who's won that title for the last 6 years. And he will have taken it very easily around the time trial course today, because as far as he's concerned, he's got to put all of his energy into the battle tomorrow on the sacred cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées.
The sprints, by the way, there's one out on the course, which they normally ignore under normal conditions. Tomorrow they'll have to race for it. And then there's one at the top of the Champs-Élysées as soon as the riders join the circuits there. And then the next one is, of course, the finishing sprint. Now, a few years ago, Robin McEwen did win the last stage, and he will certainly be hoping history repeats itself tomorrow, because that is going to be his biggest moment of his career. And you probably heard the cheers, and this is why Laurent Jalabert, the king of the mountains in his final Tour de France, you can hear the people for yourselves. He's a very popular man.
Well, he's enjoyed his Tour de France this year, and he actually went out strategically to try and win this competition. He's not a great climber, let's not forget. He's not a climber like Richard Virenque or Federico Barmontes in the past, or even Lucien Van Impe. He's an aggressive bike rider. He went on long escapades to build up a massive advantage in this competition, and the crowd love him, and they are saying a great adieu to this man this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's been very polite. He was cheered all the way around the time trial. Bernardino run over there to Velcro up his racing jersey. Yet another leader's jersey for him, but that's his for keeps this year, as it was last year. As we now look at the Swans here on the Rhone.
I suppose it's quite logical we're looking at that, because it's the swan song of Laurent Jalabert.
Oh, good thinking, Paul. That's very clever. That was excellent. Well, that's another job I've lost.
Well, you've got to try and come up with a good one now and again. But the other thing we mustn't forget about Laurent Jalabert is he's also the most aggressive bike rider this year of the Tour de France as well. And what a way to go out. Certainly going out at the top. And he's even promising at the end of the day that if he wins the World Championships, he will still retire. This is the best young rider.
The best young rider, Ivan Basso. He's really struggled at times, but he knows how to suffer. And it's all paid off dividends. Memories of 12 months ago and the broken collarbone gone now. He'll go to Paris as the best young rider, the white jersey, a jersey that others before him who are riding with success this year have worn. And I think we'll see a lot of this man. One of the few Italians who can actually ride well in a Tour de France.
Well, I thought he might just have moved up into a top 10 position there, but he in fact will have to end 11th overall at the end of today's stage, and that's the position that he will take onto the Champs-Élysées tomorrow. But a great performance by him in the mountains. One bad day when he lost some time at the top of one of the big summits, but this, Phil, I have to say, has been an absolutely superb time trial, giving us all of the emotions of the Tour de France. And to see Lance Armstrong finally kick the gas in at the end there, he really put everything on the last 20 kilometres and blew them away.
Well, he did. And also in Basso's case, you know, it's a lot better finishing 11th in the Tour de France than not starting stage 8 because you've broken your collarbone on stage 7, which is the only history he has in his previous Tour de France. But Armstrong today was simply superb. This man is like a metronome. He knew he was 17 seconds behind at 10 kilometres. He'd probably noticed the times of riders who had faded so rapidly if they'd gone out fast for those first 17 kilometres. So he came good at the end. Now, I think Frankie Andreu has got Lance Armstrong alongside him now. Let's find out. Frankie.
Lance, you looked very good today. Much faster on the bike. Leg pedal, cadence, everything great. Did you feel 100% today?
Yeah, I felt strong. I felt very good. I tried to really focus on the cadence. In fact, we added a cadence sensor to the bike so I could just sort of dumb it out and look down and make sure I wasn't spinning 125 like I did in the first one. But I started slow, tried to get into the rhythm of the race, and then saw that I was down and said, okay, now it's time to go. And
did you know that Rumsas was? Are you surprised that Rumsas did so well and was able to kind of stay so close to you?
No, I mean, I saw the first time split, and Johan told me over the radio that he was 17 seconds up, and then in the race I was sort of thinking, oh man, that's a lot in 10K, and so, but then I also considered that he was really racing against Baloki because he wasn't so far from Baloki to move up to second, and I think he probably wanted to start fast, get a good split time, and maybe demoralize Baloki early on, and at least that's what I tried to tell myself, and so
anything to make you feel better.
Anything to recoup the morale.
Tomorrow, an easy day per se. Is there anything in this Tour de France that has stood out in your mind that's been special?
Well, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the team has been exceptional, even in a time trial. You know, I feel like I'm riding with a team. I've been with these guys for 3 weeks, and they've carried me around and sort of shuttled me around for 3 weeks. So you do a time trial, and you're all by yourself. And I think about those guys. I wouldn't want to lose the race for them and do something crazy. So for me, it's the year of the team.
Well, you showed them very proud today. Thanks a lot, Lance, and congratulations.
All right, Frankie, thank you so much. Now, Phil and Paul, let's bring you back in again. We heard Lance say that he knew he was down 17 seconds to Rumsas at the first checkpoint and said to himself, uh-oh, I better kick it in. So further evidence that this guy can do pretty much anything he wants whenever he wants, right?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. He is a man who is so confident. We heard how he put a little gadget on his machine so he knew what his pedaling cadence was. This man is such a technical guy. But he is human. You may not understand that, but he is human after all. And once he knew he was down 17 seconds, he was a little bit low.
But you know what the strange thing is, Phil? You can do whatever you want. You can put little machines on to measure your cadence. You can measure your heart rate. At the end of the day, it's the heart, it's the guts of the machine that goes out and wins the time trial. It's nothing to do with mechanics and the latest bike, because at the end of the day, Armstrong is the man who has to really suffer to go out and win that time trial. The reason he did that was nothing to do with the machine that measured his cadence. It was his guts and his determination to win the last time trial of the Tour.
Now tomorrow, of course, he's home and dry. He'll ride along enjoying himself. McEwen is now going to have to take on Eric Zabel. Now last year the situation was Stuart O'Grady in green, and Stuart O'Grady, because Lance said, hey Stuart, do you want to go for this sprint out on the course? And Stuart says, no, not really. Hang on, he said. Hey Eric, do you want to go for this sprint? He said, I have to. My director says I've got to win it. He wants to go for it, Stuart. Ah, gee. So they went for it. Now I think that same conversation, Bill, will be enhanced tomorrow on the sprint out on the course, but this time I think it'll be the Australian who'll say he wants to go for it, because Robbie McEwen wants that jersey.
Are we liable to see those two jockey for position all stage long then?
Well, normally yes, but you see the problem is McEwen's fallen off on this last stage before just by joking around, and he'll be a much more serious man tomorrow. Yes, he'll have to keep an eye on Eric, and he will have to go for the sprints, so he'll have to keep the champagne in the back pocket for a bit longer, I think.
All right, Phil and Paul, thank you so much. And well, he continues to amaze, doesn't he? Lance Armstrong down by 17, wins by 53, his fourth stage win of this Tour de France. And that's going to do it for our coverage of Stage 19. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to tune in tonight at 9 Eastern, 10 Pacific for in-depth tour coverage of Stage 19. Tomorrow we crown the champion, Stage 20. We will hear from Lance Armstrong throughout the show. We're back at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, and then again at 9 Eastern, 10 Pacific tomorrow night. Stage 20, kind of unique, although it's a 144-kilometer stage. The riders actually reach the Champs-Élysées after 81 kilometers, and then they do 10 laps before the finish. The profile looks like this: slight but steady rise into Paris over cobblestones once they arrive. Very tough. We know now that U.S. Postal, with the yellow in tow, will hit the Champs-Élysées first for a parade lap, and then the fun begins. If you're curious about anything tour-related, please don't hesitate. Log on to olntv.com, your English-speaking Tour de France website. Again, thanks for joining us. For Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen, Frankie Andreu, and our Tour de France production team here in Macron, I'm Bill Patrick. Join us again tomorrow for Stage 20. We will see you in Paris.